So here we are in the garage with this beauty before we head out, and just looking at it, man, it looks absolutely stunning, really, like a piece of art. And keeping in mind, this is a 20-year-old bike right now. It's an '03 model. It's 2023 today, and it looks like it just rolled off the showroom floor. Very, very pristine. And you know, I took it to Harley Davidson because I do my own checkups, but with a bike like this, I like a senior technician to kind of have a look over it. And we did actually end up doing some stuff. For example, we did a full front brake service, new calipers, full rubbers, systems, everything has been, you know, thoroughly checked. The brake works like it's brand new right now, front and rear, we did that. And yeah, and I spent some time actually in the service department of Harley Davidson right after I bought this because it looks amazing, and it does look like the previous owner took very, very good care of it. I got 2 spare keys, and it's 13,000 miles for a 20-year-old bike, which is really nothing. So yeah, he told me, whoever had this before you babied this thing and took absolutely great care of it. Another thing we did, just for safety, because there wasn't really a major front fork seal leak. It was just a tiny bit of oil here, but just for safety, we did both of them. So now he told me, you know, you can go ride this bike as much as you want. He's like, I'm not worried about it. And that's basically what I was kind of telling him was my concern. And my concern was just that it needs to be safe for consistent riding, because that's really what this thing is for. And yeah, let's get into it. So really, the chrome and everything looks beautiful. Being the '03, you know, 100th anniversary Harley Davidson, you have little things like the 100 years cover here on the side. Obviously the logo, you know, on the side, as well on the seat. I love this. When I saw this in pictures, you know, I thought this was like it doesn't look soft. It looks like it's a pin or something. And I kind of thought that this might be a safety hazard, but honestly, it's not. It's a soft, cushiony thing. And it's still preserved in such great shape, because usually these things are kind of torn, and parking this in the sun all the time, you don't really find this in such good condition. But still, what I do is I put some leather conditioner, as with all my bikes and cars and stuff, to kind of preserve the leather. And it basically made it back to brand new. And just looking at it, it really does look brand new. So yeah, another thing you will see here is the '03 V Rod anniversary on the tank. And I love this. Well, not really tank, but we'll get into that later. I love this kind of like aluminum sleek finish. It's really a beautiful bike. What else to show you from the side? Oh yeah, being 100th anniversary, you have this 100th anniversary cover on the side, as well as something that I really appreciate them doing, because normally with certain stuff that's like 100th anniversary, it's just a couple of badges on the machine and then it's done. With this, what they did is actually I don't know how they did this. They found a way to, you know, carve this block and find like a little plaque for badging the engine. And this is not like I don't know what it's like really in there. Like it's a part of the engine. So that's awesome. Yeah, it's just really nice. Another few cool stuff that it has is the Willie G skull shifter and the pegs here for the passenger. It does have the Willie G floorboards for the front, but I haven't put them on yet. So these are the ones that came with it, and I've just been driving it as is. It also has these cool handlebars, which, you know, it's really a great looking bike. And I did put a K&N filter on this. I didn't want to mess with the exhaust. I'm keeping the exhaust stock because I actually like the quietness. I like driving this, you know, sunset at night stuff. I don't really want to bother neighbors and stuff like that, and also give myself a droning headache, because I really do want to end up, you know, cruising with this. And I didn't get this to fly around. I really got it so that I can just cruise around and enjoy, because it's such a comfortable bike, really is. And there's a few cool features which I'll get into, because it's really different from any Harley Davidson out there. And yeah, another thing I'll say is that it has the updated LED lights, which are great. And because we did the rear turn signal delete, so it's all incorporated in this light. So when I want to go left or right, it will blink here. So The safety features are still there. It's still legal. It is, going to be, I do have the license plate. I just, drive it without it right now because I don't really need to. Also, with regards to the oil filter, which we'll see probably from the other side. There it is, yeah. We'll see it from the other side. So yeah, it did come with the exact same filter. It came with a K&N chrome filter. And I love the chrome finish actually on the filter. It's a little bit more expensive than your standard, I'm assuming, for the chrome finish. And that's because looking at such a beautiful bike like this, it's basically, been dipped in chrome. It looks like a silver bullet. So that filter being black or brownish or whatever is really going to stand out and make it look ugly. So the fact that K&N makes a chrome oil filter for this, it really blends in perfectly with the bike and makes the bike stand out and look basically like an OEM filter, like it was designed for this bike. So yeah. So before we head out, I just wanted to show you the V Rod's key. And I'm really happy that I got the original 100th anniversary rubber keyring or keychain. And yeah, you can see that it's been, purchased at the dealership, which is not really too far from my house. And it's a local bike for 20 years. That's something that I've been really lucky or even blessed with, because all the service history and all that stuff is traceable with regards to this bike. And it's not some bike that came from out of state that God knows what's been done to it and kind of sketchy. With this, you can actually trace all of the services and all that. And having that history on a bike like this kind of gives me peace of mind that, it's going to last for a very, very long time and it's been well taken care of. Now, looking at this bike, you'd look here and you'd see this beautiful, sleek aluminum piece and you'd say, what a beautiful fuel tank. Well, on a V Rod, you'd be wrong. That's where the air box and the air filter linger underneath here, as well as the battery. If you wanted to access the fuel tank, you actually have to put the key where you'd obviously turn on the ignition, but for the opposite direction, you would unlock the seat where you open the seat and there's your fuel cap to put fuel in the fuel tank. So yeah, if you're ever gonna ride a V Rod and you know where that is, you'll look really smart. Yeah, so I'm gonna close it and let it click. Yep, there it is. So yeah, so we should be good to go now. And it's cool. I'm a fan of these little quirks and features on the V Rod. Some people might say, oh, it's fuel tank should be here or should be there. Well, this bike being designed by Porsche, I think they know what they were doing, and making it kind of like a drag bike, they had to change things during the design process. And again, I'm a fan of that. So let's get to it. Let's take it for a drive and go for a cruise. So freaking nice. Man, I love this bike. I really, really love this bike. For its age, freaking phenomenal. I forget how high it revs. I mean, 9000 Redline is pretty awesome. It's actually very Porsche if you think about it. Most of their cars and stuff like that, like the GT3s and GT3 RSs, are always around the 9000 rev range. Seeing a bike that has a nice story behind it of how Harley Davidson and Porsche kind of collaborated to build this bike, and technically this bike is designed and engineered by Porsche, and it's a beautiful story. You know, you can see it. I believe there's a documentary on it, on this bike, on YouTube. Could be on Netflix or Prime, I can't remember, but anyways, it's a beautiful story on how Harley Davidson basically set out on a project to make a very different Harley than their usual Harley Davidsons, and they needed help, and they went to, in their opinion at the time, the best car manufacturer. So they went to Porsche, and Porsche agreed, and they even had engineers and designers that were Harley employees sent to live in Germany for a while this bike was being built. So it's a really interesting story, and I I love this bike, and I know this has been a controversial, let's say, Harley Davidson, because it's not an air-cooled Harley. It's the first Harley to incorporate the liquid-cooled Revolution engine overhead cam, but the Revolution engine itself um, came from the racing bike. I believe it's called the VR 1000, and that's the first attempt by Porsche to kind of fiddle with it, and then this came to be, which we know now as the V Rod. So when the V Rod was released, it was truly a very controversial Harley Davidson. And even till this day, you know, I have lots of conversations with hardcore Harley fanatics, and they always tell me that they really love the V Rod, but to them, it's not truly a Harley Davidson. And I always agree with them. I'm like, you're absolutely right. This is not a usual Harley Davidson. This is actually a Porsche. And they always laugh, and they look at me and they nod, and they're like, well, it is kind of true what you're saying. And really, with regards to the engine, with them ditching the air-cooled engine and going for this Revolution V-twin with the overhead cams and the liquid cooling, keep in mind this bike was designed to be a dragster. It was built to go like a bat out of hell and race and kick other bikes' ass at the time. So they needed something more capable, and that's why they ended up with the Revolution engine, the liquid cooling, etc. But it does have a little con, because a lot of people think because it's a liquid cooled engine that it's really nice to sit with in traffic. And I agree, it is, unless you're wearing shorts like me. And by the way, I don't advise anyone to ride in shorts. Again, dress for the slide, not the ride. But this is one of the do as I say, not as I do moments, because it is a very hot day today. And again, back to the liquid cooled engine, when you're sitting in traffic, whether in shorts or riding gear and all that, once it heats up and this fan starts to activate, it blows all the heat from the engine onto you and onto your legs. So I don't mind that. So obviously this bike, being a 2003, doesn't have any babysitting nannies like ESP, traction, stability and all that stuff. No ABS, nothing. You are on your own with this bike, and it all depends on you and how good you are with judging the road and the traction and your throttle control and your brake sensitivity and all that stuff. But I honestly prefer it because, you know, yeah, say what you want. It is more safe, obviously, to have all those features, but I always believe the more stuff there is on a bike, the more stuff that can go wrong. And when it's a little bit simple, it just makes things a lot easier and makes them more timeless. And I do love the fact that this bike doesn't have too much electronics. It's just, again, one of those things that's gonna become like a timeless piece. And I really do believe that these things are way undervalued right now for what they can do and what they look like. I mean, really, I wouldn't mind just having one of these things sitting right in the middle of my house, not driven, drained out of the fluids and everything, just as a piece of art. People go and spend ridiculous amounts of money on paintings and stuff like that. I'll never understand that. These things to me are art. These things to me are timeless. They have a story, they have history, they have heritage. It's a combination. It's like a collaboration between the bike world and the car world. It's something really special and should be cherished. Back to my comment of being a raw bike. The clutch is also a very firm clutch. Sometimes I forget. I usually use 2 fingers, but on this thing I sometimes grab my third one and use it, especially when you've been riding, you know, a long time. And yeah, it's just simple bike. You have the ignition, obviously ignition switch here, and then you have on here and you start the bike, your indicators right here, left and right, your high and low lights, and your horn. That's it, nothing else, no complications. I love that. And I'm telling you, replacing those front fork seals and doing a full service on the front forks makes this bike drives like a brand new bike. They checked also the rear shocks. They were in perfect condition, which is awesome. I was expecting having to replace these or something, but they told me there's no leaks, nothing. The springs are not sagged, so we're good there. But yeah, new front fork seals, good rear suspension, good brakes, front and rear. This bike really drives like a brand new bike. And the tech did say that when he drove it. He's like, man, this drives like it's a brand new machine. And I'm like, thank God, you put my mind at ease. Despite the fact that it was designed to be a dragster and have this kind of long wheelbase and all that, I think it just looks stunning. It looks visually aesthetic and appealing. Yeah, the chrome does help with that. Also, one special feature to me that kind of stood out on the V Rod, because they changed that in the later models like the 06 and even some of the 04s and all that. The dish wheels, they went to spoke wheels. I love the dish wheels. On a V Rod, I think it just complements the look of the bike, and it really does make it look like a aerodynamic dragster. And even though this is a beautiful bike, looking at it at first glance, you wouldn't notice little details like these little slits here in the radiator opening. Like you have two vents on the side of the radiator on the front for cooling, and obviously they kind of block the center off because the tire picks up lots of rocks and stuff that can damage your radiator, but this kind of prevents that. However, they still give you the left and right massive beautiful openings that are wonderfully designed, kind of like an elongated teardrop shape. And I love how they did the chrome on top of the aluminum. It's just all fantastic, really. What a machine. Like in terms of art and in terms of styling, hats off to them, because they did a fantastic job. And looking at the front as well, normally with bikes that are like this, you have a very large, let's say, front fender, but with this, it's just like a nice little piece of aluminum, and it just looks so good on the bike. With this bike, I think the word that I'm looking for is continuity, because when you look at it from the front all the way to the back and you go in sequence, everything flows seamlessly with the rest. So it's just a beautiful machine. And again, I'm very, very impressed with this. Do not be surprised if I end up with another one exactly the same as this bike. That's how much I love it. Let's try and do a little 0 to 60. Done. Yeah, not bad. And I didn't get a great launch at all. I don't want to burn the clutch. But honestly, guys, I know there's a lot of bikes on the market, a lot of cool stuff, really. There's some really crazy stuff, especially now in 2023, but this bike to me is such a special bike. The way it looks, the way it drives, the history behind it, the story, it's just nice. And I'm a car guy, you know, but there's something about bikes, they just give you that little adrenaline boost every single time you twist the throttle. I did not mention that this bike is belt driven, which I probably should tell you, and I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I forgot to mention with regards to this bike. Oh yeah, with regards to the stock exhaust, yes, the Screaming Eagle might sound better, I will admit that, and I love my exhaust sounds, but this is the way the bike was designed. I'm going to keep it that way. It just also looks beautiful. I will say something, and for those of you guys that know me, you guys know that I'm a car guy and I've been that way all my life, even though ironically I did start out with motorcycles when I was very young. But what I'm about to say, I truly believe applies to both motorcycles and cars. I really do believe starting out on an older machine to learn the basics, to learn the gear shifting, to learn the engine braking, to learn throttle blip, so you're basically rev matching, you don't lock up the rear wheel and tire. and you rev match and you match the RPM of the engine with the rear rotating parts, like the sprocket, or in this case the pulley that is rotated by the belt. I just don't think it's wise, if you're gonna drive older bikes, to start out on a modern bike that has ABS, that has traction, that has all the babysitting nannies, even quick shifters. You don't even need to engage clutch anymore. You can just shift gears. And it's the same thing with the modern cars, especially, you know, high performance cars. The modern generation high performance cars are a lot easier to drive than the old school high performance cars. Again, you're in a car with 400 plus horsepower, rear wheel drive, no traction, no stability, no nothing. It's intense, and it's even more intense on a motorcycle, and it kind of demands your respect and demands your full attention, which allows you to learn about these things. When you slow down a bike, for example, using engine braking as well as the braking as well as throttle blipping, you're using 3 techniques to slow down the bike, and you're definitely going to be more efficient at slowing down a motorcycle than someone who's just flooring it and then, you know, just relies on slamming the brakes. Because there's a lot of cool ways to slow down the bike. I usually, even with this bike and with most of my older bikes, I really slow them down using the gears, and I try not to just hammer the brakes, because especially on an old bike like this, the tires are what really concern me. So I try not to really lock up those tires, because again, no ABS, no nothing. If you make a mistake, it's going to cost you dearly. And yeah, it's just, that's my opinion, but I do believe it's a pretty valid point, and anyone who's interested in learning probably should start with an older motorcycle. I think you guys will thank me later if you do that. Of course, if you're on a budget and you can only buy one motorcycle, definitely get the one you want. But if you have a friend or something, or if there's a way you can access an older bike, it's just, I think, pretty wise to go from like an older bike to driving a modern bike. It's gonna feel like a piece of cake to you. On the other hand, if you start with driving modern bikes or modern cars and stuff like that, and then you go to drive, you know, something like an old school race car or muscle car or something, it's going to be a lot more tricky. And it's exactly the same with the bike. I just think with the bike it's a bit more amplified, because you've gone from 4 points on the ground to 2 points, which is basically 4 wheels to 2 wheels. So yeah. And honestly, before buying this bike, I had a lot of people tell me that it's not really nimble, it's a difficult bike to control, etc. I honestly love it. Maybe that's because I'm coming from you know, driving bikes from the 70s and the 80s, so this feels pretty modern to me. But I have driven, you know, the modern super bikes, the Panigales, all that stuff, the KTMs, and, you know, Yamahas, the R6s, the R1s, and I still love this bike, really. It does feel special. It looks special, it feels special, it drives special. It's got the power to compete with bikes of today. And by compete, I don't mean like race, but, well, some, yeah, kinda. And I just love downshifting this thing. So nice. So good, really. And it's nice to have a powerful bike that's also pretty comfortable. That's what I really love about this thing, is that the comfort is there and it's really good. Like, I didn't think, looking at it in pictures, I didn't think this bike was going to be 50% as comfortable as it is, and it's just phenomenal. So that's it for today's video on the V Rod, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. This is really a special bike to me, so I just, you know, wanted to share it with you. And as always, I'll see you guys next time. Ciao.